What's up, guys? Welcome to the James Boudreau podcast, where I sit down with people from all walks of life to talk about their stories, experiences, and ideas. This podcast is brought to you by Watson Motors, the official studio sponsor. If you're in need of a Jeep, Ram, or Dodge, or whatever, these guys have you covered with great deals and even better service. So hit them up in Manistee, Benzie, or Ludington, or check them out online at watsonmotors.com. Listen, support the people that support the show. Now let's get into it. I texted your daughter. What I texted her? I sent her a message on
she knew, yeah.
Like, I don't know, 3-4 days ago, and I said, hey.
Did she respond?
I'm having your pops on the podcast. If you've got any questions or anything you think I should bring up. And she just laughed and said, I'd have to think about it. He told me he was coming on.
Yeah.
But she never got back to me, so we're shooting from the hip today, bro.
All right. Yeah, I talked to her last night. Well, I mentioned it because I know she follows it and stuff, and they're having some furnace issues. They turned off the furnace because they thought they were in the clear and went to go turn it back on yesterday and it wouldn't fire.
Oh, so probably got to wait 6 months.
They got through it. We were able to navigate through it, and they changed out the filter that was like a solid rock, and and next thing you know, heat was coming back out. So,
yeah. Well, let's dive into it, homeboy.
All right.
I did write some stuff down because I just wanted to make sure that I touched on a bunch of stuff. But I think my first question is, why law enforcement? You're retired now.
Yeah, I am. And you hear all kinds of different stories. You know, there's some people with second career. Early on in my life, I had interaction with some law enforcement, positive for the most part. But growing up in the UP, my junior high football coaches were police officers, and we also had a good hunting partner with my dad, who was in law enforcement, and so I consulted with them in high school and pretty much planned it out that way. Did some ride-alongs, and I was, it was late 80s, early 90s, kind of a wannabe cop geek, a little bit had a scanner, and graduated from high school and went to Ferris. They had it was called a non-traditional academy at the time. You got your 4-year degree and academy certified at the same time, and graduated from there in 94. And it was, at that time, hiring was crazy compared now, and it wouldn't be unusual to go take civil service tests, and there'd be hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are writing the exam for, and they were doing some big hiring back then. I applied with multiple agencies. Indianapolis, went to Wisconsin. That was a funny story. Wisconsin trip.
Why is that?
There was a group of us from Ferris that went over, and I don't even remember. I think it was Sheboygan, Wisconsin. We carpooled over, and we, because they were writing the test the next day, they had a couple spots open, and it was back. This is, like I said, this is early mid-90s when the bar sumo suits were popular. So we went out the night before the exam, the test, and we're at this bar, and they happen to have the sumo suits, and so you got these wannabe cops putting on the inflatables, bouncing around, and we go, the next day, show up at the testing site, and now the lights are on, and you look, and guys are scraped up, and like, I remember you from needless to say, that nobody that I was associated with got called back after that test, but no, so I went and Indianapolis, I wrote a test down there, got called back for an interview, and that was my first interview. And it didn't go so well. My preparation wasn't very good. And then Saginaw was a short time thereafter, interviewed there, and that went better. And so I graduated May 7th of 94, and May 9th started with the city of Saginaw. And there was it was a big group. I think it was mid-20s that got hired. There was the hiring that was happening. There was in the early 90s, because even Grand Rapids at the time, state police there were some larger groups, but it was just very competitive to get into those. And after I was offered the Saginaw job, I just stuck with that. I did that for almost 5 years. My goal was, in talking to some, again, falling back with some of the officers that I knew growing up, and being from the UP, there was some, my folks were, I was very fortunate. They wanted me to go to college, get a degree. If I wanted to come back, that was, that was my choice, but they wanted me to kind of see life outside of the UP. And I liked the medium to larger size department is kind of where my mindset was. There's more room for advancement or more room for opportunities. And that's why I chose first Saginaw and then Grand Rapids. Just because it would have afforded me opportunity. There's not to say that it's smaller departments. There's other options, but that was one of the reasons why I chose those two departments, just because they're medium size to larger departments, and it just afforded different opportunities. So,
were you married already when you were in Saginaw?
So Amy and I both. She went to Central. I went to Ferris. We're both from UP originally.
Is that where you met her?
We met. We started dating the summer we graduated high school. And
she went to the same school?
We didn't, neighboring schools.
Oh.
And she went to community college for the first year. I was down at Ferris. She transferred down to Central, and then we burned M20 back and forth between Ferris and Central for that. So I got engaged to Amy shortly after being hired in Saginaw, and then we got married the next summer. So she's been the whole through the education and through the entire career. She's been there for that, and that's a whole story in itself, because I've seen it different ways with different people. And it can be, and I think to our benefit. I mean, she's been extremely supportive, or was extremely supportive to it, and she kind of saw it the whole way through, as opposed to coming on, because it can be tricky. I've seen it with officers who married once they're already into a career, and the spouses are like, "What? I didn't sign up for this," and so it just adds another dimension.
Like when you say I didn't sign up for this, I mean, obviously most people, especially people in law enforcement or in the military, they know the statistics of alcoholism, divorce, suicide, all that stuff. When you say I didn't sign up for this, is it some of that coupled with like just the job in general?
Yes, in a nutshell. Depending on, everyone's got a different story and different levels of their comfort level, but there's the other story, like just through technology, how it evolved. There was, during my career, there was a time where I'd go on night shift, and I mean, I'm working now I'm in Grand Rapids at the time or whatever, and things are happening, and it's pushing out on Twitter, and she's getting notified, like but there's an incident, and she's getting a notification, and then she pulls up my location. I mean, and so not knowing what's going on, there were just different situations like that kind of evolved during my careers with involving technology, but. Back to if she kind of like prepared herself the whole way through as I was progressing with it, as opposed to somebody that, and it can be done. I mean, but just the schedule, the grind, some people can handle the stories, some people can't, and I was pretty much an open book with her, but. I would vet it differently if I was talking to my mom or other people, because she was nervous enough to begin with. I didn't need to add fuel to the fire. So I kind of back. So I did almost 5 years with Saginaw, and then my daughter was born. And with the other caveat with Saginaw at the time, you had to live in the city itself. After I separated from them, they got changed, and it was fine. At the time, there was a lot of police and firefighters that lived in the geographical area of the city, and we were young, and it was a nice way to interact with other young families and stuff like that. But we got to a point where. In the late 90s, we had to decide, hey, we're going to ride this out as a career or look for something different. And that's when I was looking at the state police in Grand Rapids, and I ended up I got picked up at Grand Rapids and stayed with them throughout. They had what was called a lateral transfer. It's pretty common now with most agencies, but as opposed to starting out as the
new guy?
Yeah, well, I was still new guy, but as the rookie pay rate, they would give you like a 3-year step as opposed to starting out. And it was a little bit contentious. There was some departments that it would piss them off because it's expensive to get officers trained up and hired, and then they finally get them there, and then they get ripped into. So, but now. A lot of departments are doing, just because it's so competitive. The whole process. I alluded to how competitive it was to get hired and going to college. And at that time, most the officers you either had military or college background. Some didn't have college, but now most departments you're getting sponsored. If you're paying for yourself to go through the academy, it's pretty rare. Most departments now you're getting hired, and then they're paying for you to go through the academy. So it's that aspect has changed a lot. So that got me into Grand Rapids, and
where did your career kind of evolve from? You get to Grand Rapids, and how does it step up?
Sure. I started on the road, and that's pretty normal. But within the first 2 years, Grand Rapids has a full-time tactical team, and I was able to test and get onto that team. They do the tactics, but they're also working on the road, self-initiated things. It's like a hybrid situation where if there's needs in the area, the captains will request it and send for different things, but it's predominantly working high crime areas, self-initiated.
What do you mean by self-initiated?
As opposed to being, the best way I could, there's patrol officers. The tactical team was part of patrol, but they weren't in necessarily what I will call the call rotation. They can be for special needs, but generally patrol was getting called to for calls. If it was a high priority call, we would respond and assist, or if it was a high priority call, we'd let them handle it. And if the TAC team was needed, then we would come in as a group and assist it that way. So it was, and then we weren't doing that. We were doing self-initiated in high crime areas, or doing special operations that are, say there's a string of car B&Es or something like that, and they wanted some extra help, we would use different techniques and stuff like that to come and try and take care of that, or what have you, or armed robberies, or it was a kind of a utility team. But it was all depending on the chief. They also evolved into, we were doing bike patrols and foot patrols, and so it was, like I said, it was a kind of a hybrid team with this tactical team. It's unusual. They're one of the few. It's a full-time team, but they're not like it's not like the fire department where they're just waiting at the building for the bell to go. They're still in the middle of doing things, and a lot of training, and for different opportunities. We would train with different departments. I was on the team. We went down with the contingent with Katrina, with MSP, helped out with that. So it just, again, like I said.
What was that like?
It was a strange experience. It was the weekend. I'm gonna have my days wrong, but we got there. All the crazy stuff was pretty much done. I mean, it was pretty much locked down. There were still people in the city, but it was the unknown. And it was on. I remember it was on a Sunday, and we were leaving on. It was over the weekend, and a page went out, or text went out saying, "Hey, who's available?" And there was 4 of us, a supervisor and 3 of us, so went down, and we got our gear together, met in Lansing with several other. There was a heavy group of MSP, but there was also other agencies that were represented. We went down there, a caravan down, and they broke up into different groups and had different. We were staying right in Baton Rouge at the Louisiana State Police headquarters. We were just off from there. It was like a tennis facility. It had cots in a tennis facility. That was where we were sleeping at. And then we would, depending on the operation, we would caravan down. And we were different things, going door to door, checking on things. And we would, there were some other operations that tactical operations that we were able to help out a little bit, but it was mainly just, and it was a mandatory evacuate, but they weren't they were strongly encouraging people, and most people have left, but they were strongly encouraging people to go. But the looting and all that, we were there kind of after the fact, and they were still trying to figure out what their best course of action was going to be. So it did on the tax side. And so we would do all the drugs, a lot of the drug search warrants for the drug teams at the time. So primarily, when we weren't doing tactical operations, we were doing entries for the drug teams, and that could be anywhere from, I don't know, in the mid 90s we were doing a couple hundred a year, 300 a year, maybe more. It was quite a bit. We were doing a couple entries a shift, and depending on the day with that. And so I did that for about 7 years or so, I think. And then I switched over and got into our vice unit, our narcotics with the Grand Rapids. And I spent a good chunk of my, almost 10 years in one way, as an officer, and then I ended up at the tail end of my career, came back as a supervisor into the vice unit.
So what exactly in the vice unit? Is that like plain clothes?
It is plain clothes. It's a multifaceted, again, unit. It's an officer position, or the detective, and we had an off-site. Our primary office was not at the department. It was almost like a sub-office. And we're primarily responsible for enforcing drug, alcohol, prostitution, gambling, any of those. The majority of our work went into drugs, and then and prostitution. We would help out doing liquor inspections, but it was more of a plainclothes type assignment, and there was we had a day shift and an afternoon shift, and the day shift was responsible for more of the administrative stuff, and the night shift was doing more but it was blended with more the proactive work with that. During that time, in addition to that, I also became a liaison with Grand Rapids and the DEA. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of continue working the drug investigations, but more of a kind of a broader focus. And that was, again, giving me opportunities. I was primarily in the West Michigan, Grand Rapids specifically, but West Michigan, but it led to all different areas of the nation, California and Texas and Arizona, and depending on the investigation and stuff like that. So, again, that was kind of, throughout my career, every 5 to 7 years, I was fortunate enough to be able to kind of pivot and do different jobs within a job, and that falls back to where my mindset was, that's why I kind of wanted a medium to larger size department.
I'm just sitting here thinking about the prostitution, the drugs. In my mind, I've got like every cop movie playing right now: jeans, leather jacket, beard, longer hair, and you're interrogating somebody like, "Where'd you get the drugs from?" And like you're slowly going down some seedy part of Grand Rapids, and there's hookers on the side of the street. And they're like, "Oh, it's the cops."
Yeah, it was a cat and mouse game. Both, I guess. But yeah, the prostitution was tricky because, we had unmarked, regular cars, but they'd get wise to cars, or we'd be doing drug raids and we'd see them in the house, but now they're back on the street, and so we're trying to, oh no, that wasn't me that you saw during the raid, and stuff like that. So, and that added, like I said, growing up in the UP, a lot like Manistee, kind of got thrown right into the mix from Saginaw and inner city Grand Rapids. So it was. And that I still remember one of the old time officers, when I started in SAG, and I was like, well, just give me a hard time, and I started getting I enjoyed the drug aspect investigation. He's like, what are you going to do? Try and trade them snowshoes for crack cocaine, and just give me a hard time and stuff. But but even on the prostitution thing, I mean, it's we, depending on the level, and like I said, I was a different level. We were working more of the street level stuff, whether it was street level drugs, street level the prostitution. But even that evolved during my career. I mean, if you were a prostitute still on division, that means you didn't have enough money to buy a phone and get on websites and be able to do it remotely. Right. So that the technology was crazy during my career. I mean, when I started in '94, email wasn't a thing. Cell phones, pagers, nothing. I mean, so you look at from '94 until I just retired. It was a year ago. January of 24, how much that's evolved over the sense of the last 30 years on both sides. I mean, it helped out on a lot, but I always use the analogy of like the radar detector. The same company making radar detectors for the public to use are the ones building radars for the officers. I mean, it goes both ways. They're making money on both sides.
You got to capture the whole audience.
Exactly. So, or they're building the lasers, so that's a whole other, the technology and. But yeah, so did that. And like I said, really enjoyed the aspect of the drug investigations and
what does that look like a drug investigation, like from like you catch somebody peddling crack or something, and then like how does that move up the chain?
It varies depending on the situation. There is some of that, we would be, somebody would get pinched, and we'd go debrief them and find out if they want to, help us out and help themselves out. There'd be like, we'd get tips from the neighborhood through Silent Observer or whatnot. Hey, something's fishy at my neighbor's house or down the road, and we may initiate an investigation based on that. And we conduct surveillance, watch, build our own case from there. So, as through training, through different investigations, there's different techniques that would be utilized, and maybe multiple techniques that are used in the same investigation. And you find that, if it works, people would find that, like, I just know we used to go through people's trash and to get probable cause, and in addition to information, or somebody gets pinched, and then there could be undercover work, could be informant work. So it varied depending on the investigation, and you kind of had to assess what is the best course of action for that investigation. So we would do some undercover work. I mean, it wasn't like, at least when I was there, it wasn't like guys were moving into houses and living a different life.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. No. Like, what's the undercover like?
Yeah, it was primarily, I mean, it's
not like the movies.
Well, depending, I don't know. And I mean, but it's funny. I mean, you get officer, generally speaking, there's like a evolution of a vice cop. Yeah. Most of the time because they have a short haircut because they're on the road, they get into it, and then now they grow it, crazy beard and long, and then after a while they decide, I'm going to go bald, so they shave it. Now they go to the bald look, and then you come back and it's kind of a normal haircut. But that's usually like the evolution of a white guy. If they can do it. Now there's some guys that have hair issues, and they're a little bit limited unless they put a wig on what they can do. So, but it was at least from my experience, was more street level things. We would do, some like either quick buy bus on the street, or we may do delayed cases, which means we'd, make a buy, try to identify the person, let it go, make a, build, figure out where they live, or so more of a delayed case. We're not arresting them right off the start, and so it varied, and then it just depends on the investigation.
Yeah, so like in my mind, I'm thinking like, right, you do like you said, like a buy on the street. Mm-hmm. Does that eventually get to like, who's your supplier? Who's your supplier? Let's get to the drug cartel.
That's the goal. I mean, ultimately, and I guess I'm kind of when I just on the vice side, we would do our thing. But then on the DEA, like I said, it was a broader. I would take like, or not just me, but we would say like, somebody gets busted over here or over here, we can make a connection. Now we're trying to put a larger case where they're networking. We'll take multiple cases and trying to put a federal case together. And there are benefits and limitations to both sides. I mean, one of the benefits was, historically, it's changed a little bit on the federal side. It was a bigger hammer. I mean, if they knew the DEA was sniffing around, they would either quick play out in state court, or they would sometimes cooperate quicker because they thought it would. But they, just because it was a bigger hammer. The guidelines were longer if it qualified, but some of those sentencing guidelines got softened. They historically they kind of lost their teeth a little bit. What that was, but depending on what role I was in, like when I was the liaison with the DEA, we were trying to work up and put federal cases together, multi-state, and kind of track it backwards. one of the limitations are and we're in Michigan, just geographically, for drugs to get this. There's a lot of drug teams between here and the southern border, or what, but we would use all kinds of whether it was the postal services or FedEx or there was other.
Probably had to work with Canada a little bit too. Yeah,
I did very limited experience with Canada. It was it was mainly United States agencies, Homeland Security, ATF, DEA, the vegetable soup, FBI, in that aspect. But again, I equate it, and it's got pretty simple approach, but you're putting the puzzle together.
Yeah.
You're trying to connect the dots, and either work it backwards or build it up. If somebody gets pinched, and we would, so we did that, and then in about 2016, I got promoted to sergeant, and so I went back. I came out of the drug work, and then went back onto the road as a supervisor on the night shift primarily, and so I did that a few years there, and that was when then COVID got in there, and then I was doing that with the last several once Minneapolis kicked off. Yeah. So that was quite on the road during all, but like I said, with COVID, with the riots, and then
George Floyd. What's the
and Breonna Taylor? That had more of a Grand Rapids tie.
Yeah.
So she's from that. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Louisville. So yeah, we unfortunately we were not immune to nationwide. They had the situations, and we had to.
What's the vibe in the department during that?
Which COVID, the riot, which part?
So George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all this stuff going on, and everybody's got cell phones in police officers' faces, and it's, I get anxiety thinking about it. What's the?
It was some wild times. It was some wild times. The night of the riots, and because Grand Rapids we had multiple protests, but there was the night of the big riots. I was up here, and I went back down to Grand Rapids because it was going to be starting my regular work week. But we had there was going to be a protest, and I was on our field force team, and so we were kind of prepping for some different things. But there was the night before the big the riots in Grand Rapids, there was things popping off in other areas of the nation that were troubling. It was like I said, through technology, if something's happening in Atlanta or in LA or anywhere, through Snapchat and Reels, it's instantly getting pushed out.
Yeah. And
so we were seeing what was how things were ramping up. And it popped off in Grand Rapids just like it did in other places. And I'm sure Grand Rapids. Unfortunately, there was a lot of destruction. Fortunately, we didn't have any major injuries to officers involved. A lot of the property owners are in Grand Rapids and had. From looting and just had damage. We for the most part, we were just trying to hold our own with the department. The department shared space with Secretary of State buildings and stuff like that. And there were, it was just, you could see it ramping up even as the protest was going on. Next thing you know, they're trying to, from they're trying to catch things on fire.
There's
and
a bunch of bad actors.
And as it got darker, it was getting. You could see it coming, and it popped off, and so that was the big one. The nice thing, so that was a long night. It was all hands on deck, and we were trying to. That was the prop. We were trying to get people into the department to handle things, and we were the department itself was surrounded, and so it was tricky to get people safely in, and then it was a long night. We ended up, things slowed down, finally got things under control as much as we could. Went home that night, I don't know, it was the middle of the night, early in the morning, and then I had to work the night shift the next day. And we came back, and it was crazy. I mean, and it was amazing to see the Grand Rapids area, how they rallied. There was still a lot of graffiti and stuff out, but people just came down and were cleaning things up and trying to put it back together, board things up, and that part was really refreshing to see that, just because comparatively to what it was the night before. Yeah. And so that was kind of the big one. And then there was multiple other ones, and so it could just it was a grind. I mean, they were and eventually after, things kind of, just like nationwide, it kind of slowed down and things, but we had to deal with multiple pop-up protests and things. I mean, there was one, and it was like Division of Fulton, it was next to the department, but in between the two major hospitals. They had they were out having a rally, driving around town, and then everyone just stopped there and blocked off and kind of had a car protest of some kind, and so we rallied some troops and called for some tow trucks, and some people got pushed around, and we got it resolved. But that was on a Sunday night. So there was a grind. I mean, that was coming off that was right in the same time with COVID and stuff, and that was a huge disruption with everybody.
This episode is brought to you by Brandon Ball, broker owner of Dwelling Realty, Keller Williams, Northern Michigan. Are you looking to sell your home? Then look no further. When you list your home with Brandon Ball, you'll get a trusted advisor who will guide you through the entire selling process. With extensive knowledge of the local market, he'll help price your home competitively to attract the right buyers. And with proven marketed strategies, your home will be seen by the most qualified of buyers. With 17 years in the business, you'll have someone experienced who's on your side. Contact Brandon today to get started selling your home. 231-690-4981. That's 231-690-4981. Or Brandon at dwellingrealty.com.
But including law enforcement officers?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to that when, I don't know how much of it was rumor, how much of it was true, because I never experienced it here, but I would hear stories like during the beginning of COVID when it was kind of like more of it was the lockdown time, and I'd hear stories that like people were just driving someplace, maybe going from Manistee to Ludington, and the state police would pull them over, and I'm like, I don't know if that's 100% true, but there was always that kind of underlying, like, you're going to get arrested right now if you're out of your house.
Yeah. Well, there was, we weren't enforcing, that, but there was, for me specifically, at the time we had our house up here, and there was, the governor said, hey, I think it was Easter weekend, or we did our things, came up, and then things got reversed, and it said you need to be at your primary house, because we obviously had the two places, and we're in the city, and I'm like, I'm not gonna, people know what I'm gonna comply. So we packed back up and went back, and so yeah, it was more so, in Manistee was just the unknown of not knowing. We just didn't want to have your entire department get sick at the same time, and now who's going to cover what, and so there was different strategies in place for that, and it affected. Everyone's lives were affected, but it affected that. Affected everybody differently. We changed our shifts around, and in case somebody got sick, there was enough delay or time in between where they could get healthy before they had to come. I mean, so there was things. Everyone was doing the best they could to put out the best product and keep everybody healthy. And we changed things. If people were arrested, would have to come over and go through a checklist and thermometer and see and make sure, and we would sign off to make sure that they're okay to go to.
Yeah.
So it was just another layer of.
I mean, what did crime look like during that time? I remember when I was talking to Megan McCarthy from the Children's Advocacy Center shortly after everything was lifted, and it was kind of somber because she was like, well, we're not really getting a whole lot of calls, and that was not a good thing because the kids were just at home with their hardships and nobody was around to report.
We were trying to control it best we could. Keep things, but there were some things that was. I'll take, for instance, like Secretary of State's closed.
Yeah.
So you can't go renew your license plates. You can't, if you buy a car, you can't, and people knew that. So they would take their plates off their own cars.
Yeah.
I'd be in a marked patrol car sitting at a red light.
That's right.
And I'm getting passed in the turn lane and they're blasting through the red light, knowing that I'm not, and there's no plate on the car, knowing that by policy they can't chase them. And I'm not saying it was a free for all, but it was some loose stuff. There was during that time, again, nationwide. If it happens, anywhere else in the nation, to a smaller scale, so L.A. or California was having issues. Young adults were breaking into car dealerships, breaking in, grabbing keys, running on the lot, and figuring out which keys work with what cars and driving. And then they got in some high-end stuff. Well, that gets pushed out. Next thing you know, all the car dealerships in the Grand Rapids, not all of them, a lot of them, the big dealerships, the mom and pops, they're dealing with the same stuff. And so we'd have, all of a sudden, these kids are running in, grabbing keys, and things were a little blue. There was a lockbox, but there's some dealers that leave stuff on their.
We know those dealerships.
Everybody had to tighten it down a little bit. But that had it, and then we had like Kia and Hyundai all of a sudden popped off, and all those were getting stuff. Again, that was a social media kind of thing, took off, and so it was some wild times with that. So, but overall, made it through. You adapt to it, and you push through and go from there. So shortly after that, there was an opening back in the vice office as a supervisor, and I came back into that and did that for a couple of years before I retired and became a permanent Manistee resident.
Which we love.
It's worked out well.
Yeah,
it's worked out well.
Having you here is maybe let's.
Yeah, go. I know there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. But if we go back to kind of the beginning at Ferris, because you have some pretty strong connections here in Manistee.
Yeah.
And before I met you, you're friends with all the people that I'm friends with.
Yeah,
and
it's really. I'm a big believer. Everything's happens for a reason.
Yes, sir.
And you don't realize it at the time. And so full circle back to Ferris. I went in blind my freshman year and got. My roommate was he graduated from Cadillac, but he'd been the majority of his schooling in Manistee, and so just blind. He and I were, and that kind of networked me into more of the Manistee people. So my whole 4 years through Ferris, were Manistee roommates, and
we shout them out.
I
the Pefleys and the Dorns of the world.
Yeah, well, Pefleys. I didn't live with that was more schooling. I didn't live with them, but Jason Lloyd and Aaron Taylor, Jeff Olin, Troy Mackey, and then that got me when Jason Thomas was in CJ and Jeff and Chad, and got me punched in with Eric Gustad and Kip Snyder. So it was a who's who, and so we would come back, and I got exposure to Manistee, and again it reminds me. I grew up in Escanaba on the shores of Lake Michigan, up north town. There's a lot of parallels between there and here, and same thing with Amy, and so there was the Manistee connection, and kind of lost, as life happens, and everyone goes their own separate way, and then kind of reconnected about 6 or 7 years ago, and when we were trying to plan the next step, and we were, 6 years ago we ended up buying a little house up here and reconnected with some of my Manistee people, and then met a lot more Manistee people, whether it's through the liquor store or biking or running or the beach, or we're just networking that way, and so it's been a fun transition, and it continues to be, like I said, that transition.
I met you at Run Club, and then we did a bike ride, group ride that you were a part of, and we did a couple of times like that. And I never asked you what you did for a living. And I got home one day and I said to Betsy, I know this guy Tom, and I think he's a cop, but I don't want to just ask him.
Yeah. It usually comes out. Well, even now in my my career of substitute, the kids figure. Something I don't want it, to necessarily define me. It was for 30 years. It was, but some things are hard to shake a little bit, and so, yeah.
So, like with the, progressing through your career, and obviously Amy's got a challenging career. Your wife as an educator, but 2 kids.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of like the froofy part of the podcast where I want to figure out, like, what is your work-life balance? The older I get, I don't know if there's a whole lot of balance in life. But obviously Amy's got her own challenges as an educator, and that's very stressful too. And then obviously your career was very stressful, and then bringing 2 children into the mix. How do you parse that out?
Yeah. That like everything else in life, it's a challenge. And I think, again, I fall back to, Amy's been with him the whole time, so she's seen my career. And there was times when the kids she put her career on hold a little bit, stayed home after our son was born, and we were, for a year, went back half-time, then back in full-time, and we're trying, just like most America, you're trying to find that balance, with, is it better off both spouses working full-time daycare, part-time daycare? So that was a challenge that we had to work through. And there were, I think, she's been in education for her entire career. Obviously, my career was in law enforcement. There were a lot of parallels. You're dealing with the public. You're dealing with administration. So we would have, discussions both ways, and we would not commiserate, but could relate with the circumstances, and that, and I think that's helped also. The kids, it was, you, as any parent, I hope that you do the best you can, and you try to, or at least I, try to show, good work ethic and commitment to your spouse, but it can be a grind, and you got to find that balance. I wanted them to have as much opportunity as we could provide, but with, we were on, from a lot of the change, majority of my career was either on nights or afternoons, and so a lot of Amy was at home with the kids in the evenings. Other than my days off, and she would always give me a hard time because she had everything under control, and I would come in and they're like, I got to fix this. This isn't now what you're going to get. You're like, where are you the rest of the week? But we were, and again, trying to find that balance. We went through shift work and overtime. We're going hard and trying to make money and keep up, and but also balance that home life with the kids. And a lot of mine fell off, or what I attributed to, I think, with my physical training and stuff like that. I try to keep that as a priority to help out. I recognized early on, that now more than ever, there's a lot more, whether it's military, law enforcement, or in the medical field, they're cognizant of, more of burnout and the stressors and coping mechanisms and stuff like that. And so for me, physical conditioning and training was a big outlet to help me kind of stay balanced. And it continues to be that way. But it's with the kids and shift work. You want them to have the best situation that they can, and we're like I said, I think we did a lot of it. I was fortunate, even though I was on my kids were in sports, and I was able to make majority of their activities and stuff. It was rare that I wasn't, I was able to work things around. Now there's times where I may get a call and have to quick bounce, but I was able to get to those things, and we had adapted to it. But it was. There was. I'm not saying it was a smooth road the whole time, and but we tried to make it as best we could. So,
how has Manistee helped you in the transition? Because you've told me numerous times that when you would come up here before you retired, it was like, well, I get to not be a police officer while I'm up here.
That was huge. I mean, we talked. I referenced, the riots and the protests and COVID, and so we bought the house up here about 6 years ago. So this will be our sixth summer, and that was huge for me. It was a great outlet. I could kind of check out and be up here and do things, and then even though I had law enforcement ties up here, friends who just mindset wise, because I
Constantly
wasn't
trying to pull you back in.
Yeah, and some of it I'm self-induced. But it was a great outlet to be able to have that option.
Yeah,
I was very fortunate. I would leave the house open year round. I mean, we didn't shut it down. I'd tell him, I gotta go see if need to go shovel snow up there, and so I'd load up the dogs and shovel out, and with the neighbors or cut the grass. I mean, it was just a good outlet for me to be able to do that, and then, like I said, reconnecting and hunting and fishing, and just nice to have that option, and. Because I could feel, I could sense it, when I was heading back to and part of it's still any other job. I mean, you're thinking about, okay, what's the work week look like, and getting things in order, and even the transition from 30 years of law enforcement into retirement, trying to figure out that next step. It's been a process, and I think most people, and I'm fortunate, early 50s, be able to have a pension. It's pretty unusual to have a pension and stuff nowadays, and be able to have that opportunity. Most people think, when I retire, I'll just hunt and fish or whatever I want, and
try again.
Yeah, and it's good to have, I don't know, 30 years of shift work, and I'm still on that. I think it's just get used to that structure and stuff like that. And so it's been a process. It's been a good process. Just trying to figure out that next. I'm kind of a planner and it's not the same to me, the natural progression, you graduate from high school and you go to college, or you go to the military, you get your job, and then you get married, then you have, the transitioning out of the workforce is not as clear cut as it is to work into it. And it's almost like, okay, now what? But it's good. I mean, I didn't realize how tired I was until,
Sure.
You learn to adapt to things, but then after a while, you kind of, decompress a little bit and all right, we're going to be okay. Things that, I think throughout my career, I've, been involved with multiple different things, and try to navigate crises and stuff like that. And it's helped me just to kind of, and as you get older, put things in perspective a little bit. And I equate it, and we talked before about, like training for a marathon or the Ironman, or the process, and enjoying the process, not just the event itself, but the entire, because the culmination is the final race, but it's the process of getting there, whether it's sleeping, nutrition, the training, all those things that come with it. And I equate that, whether it's career or raising kids. I mean, again, I don't care what career you're in or how it's going with your kid. There's going to be bumps in the road, but how do you navigate that process?
Well, there's a couple of things out of that when you're talking about like the training. So one of the things I wanted to ask, because like you're absolutely right with the training, and then the finish is the race. But for me, I always look back at the training and go, I'm actually looking forward to doing that again.
Yeah.
Which is why you sign up for the next race or whatever. But also, all of that training is what keeps me mentally sharp.
Sure.
And it keeps my emotions in check, and it keeps me feeling more positive. I got a friend of mine, it stuck with me for a while, because this is maybe a couple of years ago. I'd finished a run. I came to the coffee shop. He was in the coffee shop, and he was laughing. And I'm like, well, what's so funny? He's like, what are you running from? Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me, because I think there's a big part of me that does everything that I do, because I know that if I don't do it, I'm going to have some negative effects, mm-hmm. right? Like I'm mm-hmm. going to get depressed or mm-hmm. whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes, I actually think a lot about this, where like when I was in the military, I fucking loved it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I loved it. I had a good time. I was in military police, and I seen some really wild shit, and I had some really good times and made some really good friends with people that I still talk to today, fortunately, because of social media. And there are times where I'm just like laying in bed and I'm like, man, what if I was still doing it? Like, mm-hmm. what would it be like today for me if I was in for 25 years or whatever? And, my period of time was only 8 years, but like for you, for that huge chunk of mm-hmm. your life, mm-hmm. I mean, and it's relatively recent. I mean, you haven't been retired that long, mm-hmm. but for the period of time that you've been retired, I mean, how hard is it to just cut that rope?
I think, you talked about being up here as opposed to down there. To me, that was for me mentally, that was it was almost like ripping off the Band-Aid. I mean, yeah. And I wasn't an officer up here, and so it was at least for me. Mentally, it was ripping off the Band-Aid, and now I'm up here. Now, I'm still have again ties to different law enforcement, but it's my own choosing up here. But it was, it was a problem. But I think the fact that I wasn't an officer up here, it was to my benefit. Now, not to say you can't do it. I mean, there's people that retire all over the place and they stay in their same hometown. But that was a benefit to me. And we are. Amy and I, we obviously, trying to process. You make the call and you don't look back. And I'm not through my career, we talked about different phases and opportunities, and I like that. I'm not change can be stressful and difficult, but I think it's healthy too. I mean, to step out of your comfort zone a little bit and continually to evolve, whether it's signing up for an Ironman or it's for, and to your point, I think, when you have an event that you're training for, it's not, you have a goal in mind. It as opposed to, well, I'm going to go out today and run a 5K, or I'm going to do a 6 mile. You know, to your point, I think when you have, regardless of what the event is, I mean, it doesn't have, because.
And for some people, it could be a 5K.
It could be. I mean, but I think if you just that mind, if you have what's the mission, what's the goal, and how are we going to put ourselves in the best position to be able to attain that, I'm. You and I were active enough. I'm not as fast as I used to be, but I'm trying to be consistent. My goal is to, I know I've heard the stats with law enforcement, military, and with the shift. You're taking years off your life with that. And again, I think through diet and exercise and mental health, there's things that are in place I think will change those. I hope will change those numbers, but I'm cognizant of that. And so, my goal is to try and be alive at least as long as I work full time, and what can I do to put myself in a position to do that. And so whether the speed may not be there, but just trying to be consistent with things and yeah.
Well, the one to kind of stay on the physical and the training side of it, back to the department, you had said to me that, and you sent me a video of the physical training that the officers are going through now with kind of like jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And that was beginning on the tail end of your career?
Yeah. There's been different, throughout my career, there's been, just like anything, I mean, there's different strategies or things in place, but there has been a heavy emphasis over the last several years of more of specifically the BJJ through military and now with law enforcement with that. And that prior to that, it was more like pressure points and kicks and strikes, and I mean there's batons and sprays and things like that. But there has been nationwide has been an emphasis on incorporating that. It was there was officers that I worked with that were already in their personal lives incorporating that, but now a lot of departments in Grand Rapids specifically, even as I was leaving, was incorporating that more now. And I look at it, the optics are better. Yeah. And it's just another tool in the tool bag. I mean, I'm not saying that kicks and strikes are going to be obsolete,
right?
But the optics are better. The control, to some extent, is better. But there's still some things where, I mean, if you know that a person is armed, then there may be other options as opposed to rolling around. That you may want to take in consideration. But the tactic-wise, I mean, those have to be, determined by individual officers or departments and stuff like that. But yes, those are. It's getting pushed out more, and in a lot of. I think it's like anything else. You're building blocks. You do it in static drills, but then and try to incorporate it in how it's going to be used in real life activities. If you can give officers exposure to that, it's to their benefit. Now, what you're balancing, to me, is the safety of the role player and the officer. I mean, if we do this training and 3/4 of the people get hurt, and now we can't go and do their job. Right. I mean, are we
it's
really
a delicate balance.
It is, for sure. You want to make it as real as you can. And throughout my career, I was heavily involved with training. I still enjoy that aspect, and the training has evolved immensely throughout my career. I mean, now with scenario-based things and exercises, and even the days of being on the range and, with bullseye targets and static stuff. A lot of departments are incorporating, more dynamic. But in order to get there, you have to have building blocks in place to get there. And a lot of
and money to do the training.
It's always that's always the balance of because and time.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you're pulling officers off the road to go to training, who's going to cover the road while they're gone? And so the money is an issue. Rounds aren't cheap. Backfilling with to cover the needs of the department at the same time. There's always is a challenge too. But overall, I think a lot of departments, just with the scenario-based trainings and stuff like that, it's really to the officers and or recruits or whatever they're at. I mean, it gives them better exposure to potentially what they're going to handle in a real life situation. They may not. It may not be the exact scenario, but it should give them enough confidence to where that they are comfortable saying, "Hey, this worked for me in the past, or maybe I'll try that in order to have a successful, be able to handle the situations successfully."
I think it's great. I think every department should definitely put something into it. An officer should know how to protect themselves physically, fight, and because back to we were talking about hand grabbing and pressure points and shit. Like when I was going through the police academy training, it was like we were learning. They were training us to be like Steven Seagal. Mm-hmm. It was fucking Aikido. It was pulling fingers, and bending wrists, and everything was like one of these. Like, okay, if the guy comes in with a knife like this, what do you do?
Yeah,
that was the training, dude.
Yeah, I know. Well, but the thing is, and that's best case, but you're dealing with a lot of different personalities, physical strength, abilities, and so you're trying to balance all that into pushing out the best product, or at least a minimum standard to push out the best product for the safety of, like you said, of the officers and of the public, and also.
You started when there was no social media or anything. But now you can go on YouTube and you can watch cops get their asses beat on the side of the road, and it's like,
good, bad, or otherwise, it's there. And like I said, it was a wild time. Starting in '94 with no social media. With no phone. I remember early on, if a doper had 2 pagers on him, I was using that as probable cause. Not just that, but but you would build it up like, why do you need 2 pagers? So it's been, and it's like anything else. The policies have changed, the technology has changed, the laws. You just adapt to it, and that's and the officers have to. The criminals, it's a free for all. But the officer, you have, through the Constitution and law, you have in policy, you need to, follow through with that. So I'm not saying it's you just got to, put yourself in the best position and utilizing those to put a case together or what have you. So
I don't want to keep you here all day, but a couple more things. So how did Grand Rapids change over your 2 decades there? Again, now this could be just folklore. I spent a little bit of time in GR. I had a girlfriend that went to Grand Valley, and it was like we didn't go down certain streets like back, say, just 20 years ago or more. Like, wealthy's a lot different today than it was back then. Yeah. And I can't remember who told me this, and but I have a memory of talking to somebody, because I still have friends that have lived in Grand Rapids forever, and there was a story that there was like the police officers just didn't go down certain areas of Grand Rapids. I don't know if that's true or false. Like, it was just so bad that it was too dangerous for police officers to go.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so that was definitely like an urban legend.
Well, or it was pre-'99, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident that now, depending on the circumstances, you may be better off to have a couple. I mean, but I don't know. There was no streets that were like, don't go down this that were off limits that I can remember. No. The benefit of, and so I've 5 years and almost, it was just under 5 years in Saginaw, and then about 25 years in Grand Rapids. So Grand Rapids historically has got a more diverse business. I mean, Amway's there. You've got all the different businesses there. Whereas on the east side, Saginaw was so reliant on the automobile industry, or the industries that are related with that. So financially, I think overall that west side has been with. Through the economic situations and stuff, has been able to withhold better just because it's a more diversified businesses. The prior to me getting there, even like the Van Andel Arena or whatever, I mean, before they built that, I mean, they had to, because that's a big, a lot of from up north, they come down for shows or whatever, and so I will say the Amway, DeVos, Van Andel, they put a lot of money into that city with different. They continue to. I mean, I'm out of the mix, but like the new soccer stadium that's downtown, and there's amphitheaters, and so financially, there's been a lot of which. Is to the benefit of everybody. Now, and even like the housing market down there is just as tough as it is up here, and everyone's trying to. But they, like you said, wealthy there's a lot of people of, I think with Grand Valley moving their Allendale campus into the west side, there were some houses that became now student rentals that were, and so a lot of. I'm not saying everything's roses and stuff, but I think they've done a lot financially to rebuild things, and I can't. There's places some are. There's no question that some are safer than others, but there's no roads that officers are afraid to go down. And now there are some spots that if you're out after midnight in certain areas, there's a higher probability that you may have a negative result, probably, than if you're in other areas. Yeah, probably. So you make good choices and go to bed early, and you don't have to worry about that stuff. So, but it was. It's not immune to, through the city government has its challenges, just like city government does everywhere else, and they're dealing with a lot of it. I equate it, whether it's drug problems or housing, it's just on a different scale. You have, because there's more people there, and the same problems that Grand Rapids and Manistee is having it, just on a different scale. And so is how I kind of compare it or equate it to. But yeah, I think that answers. The involvement of it. I think it just because it's a diversified, not so reliant as opposed to the east side on automobile industry, and that just has been more of a turbulent situation that it's been to the benefit of the on that west side.
Do you miss the pace?
Sometimes I do. Yeah, there's certain things that, and I still track. I don't have as much contact with. There's some that there's certain things. It's like anything else. There's certain things I miss. There's certain things I don't miss. I miss the officers that I worked with and for. I miss interacting with them. And like I said, putting the puzzle together and stuff. But I also, it's it's time. I mean, there's other things. I mean, I'm conscientious of. About I have other things that I wanted to do, and so trying to balance that, and with Amy's career, and it'll work out. But it's been like I said, it's been a process. It's funny. Was not a big podcast person until after I was out on the fishing on the pier, and while I'm working out, I'm usually listening to music and stuff. But I found a podcast about transitioning out of military and law enforcement, and that kind of introduced me to the podcasting, and then I listen to a couple different ones now and stuff. So that's helped with the transit, just to kind of think about different things. But it's given me, as much as I miss it, it's given me other opportunities that I've got 2 grandkids now. My folks were in Florida for the winter. I drove their car down to them and drove it back up in this. I mean, just different things.
Right.
My schedule is freed up differently. I've got some part-time jobs that I'm doing, but I can kind of pick and choose to an extent on how I'm involved with that. And so, like I said, I think that having that flexibility or that freedom is helped out. But I still need. I found that I still need that structure though too. I'm not quite ready to meet the guys that I said this before at the coffee shop at like 6 o'clock in the morning. And
could be the move though.
I'm not. It could be. It could be. I think it's more likely to meet for that's good to work out in, and then we'll have a coffee.
Yeah.
And then so.
One more question. We'll wrap it up with this. If considering the climate of law enforcement and how perceptually, with social media and the news, it looks like it's really difficult to be in law enforcement these days. If a young man graduates from high school and comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about going down the path of law enforcement. Do you think it's a good idea?" Like he's asking you, or she's asking you.
Sure. Sure. I do. I mean, I'm a huge advocate. I've been helping out with training with some recruits since retirement and stuff, and I enjoy that exposure. I think it's very challenging, but it's an extremely important position to have, and I think the pendulum is coming back to where there is, and depending on where you're at, I mean, there's certain areas that have more appreciation for law enforcement than others, and that's going to continue to be the case. But I would say even in the worst of the worst, there are people there that they want officers to come and they want to be able to feel safe. Like I said, I think it's an extremely important position. I think that you just have to be smart with how you do it. I mean, I'll go back. When I started, we had no in-car cameras, no body cameras, no. I mean, by the end of my career in the patrol, I mean, you got your car and your camera, car and your body. I mean, you just get used to operating that way, but you're still human. And people are gonna, if something goes sideways, and a lot of times things go sideways, they're gonna slow things down to milliseconds and looking at things, and so it's more. Are we timed out?
No. I didn't have this turned off.
No, more times than not, you just gotta be conscientious and adapt to and make sure you're doing the right things for the right reasons. And I truly feel that most people that get in, they have in their heart of hearts, they're trying to do what's best for their service, to whether whether education or law enforcement or nursing or what, but it's a calling, and it's challenging, but it's very doable. And if you do it right, I mean, you're not going to get rich, but if you make good choice, I mean, you're going to have, you should be put yourself in a position where you'll be financially sound. And again, it's like most people, they're not calling on law enforcement when they're having a good day.
Right.
And so you're seeing people
at their worst.
At the worst. Or I equate it, when you can't figure out how to solve the problem, whether it's your neighbor's dog or your neighbor's music, or you crashed into a tree, or, I mean, when you can't solve your own problems, law enforcement gets involved. Good, bad, or otherwise, and so that's why I feel it's an important, in order to maintain some type of normalcy, the safety, everything that comes in with it. It's extremely important. That's why we need qualified people to be able to do that. But like I said, there is still a human element to it, and there's going to have that challenge.
Has the education? I remember it being in high school, and we had the school liaison officer in there. Shout out Dave Nemesek. So I asked him. I was probably a junior in high school. Like, hey, next year, then we graduate. What do I have to do to be a police officer? And he at that time, and I don't think you needed to, but he was like, you should at least get your associate's degree. Yeah. And then I think it was just like the MCOLs or whatever. Yep. Bang that out, take the test, and then you can get a job. Is it different now?
It's not. You don't. Different departments have different standards. Some departments, it can be up to them if they want to say, hey, you have to have a 4-year degree or a 2-year. I don't believe through MCOLs. Through MCOLs. There's no college prerequisite that's because you can go to the military, come back and get hired. So I think just for life, personally, for life experiences, I'm a huge advocate for education. Now, if you graduate high school and decide to go in the military and then want to get retire from the military and want to get into law enforcement, if you're not doing the GI Bill or whatever, I still think I'm an advocate for education. Now, is it mandated? Probably not. But if I'm an administrator looking at applicants and I've got these, and you don't have a degree, but this person has military experience, this person has a 4-year degree. I mean, where are you going to fall in that pecking order? Yeah. So I don't think I would, I don't know. It would be. I would say it's mandated. I would encourage it. I think the life experiences, learning just time management, solving problems. I mean, just everything that comes that's involved with that. Now, and at least it gives you insight to make sure that that's where you're really And to me, if you go out and get a 4-year degree, it's showing. Now I was not an administrator, but in my crystal ball that you showing initiative. This isn't just like, hey, I'm going to give this a try. I watched Cops last night, and I think that that I want to give this a try. It shows to me that you've put yourself in a position where through time, effort, and potentially money that you're trying to better yourself to.
Become a cop.
Yeah, there are a lot of departments hiring. Yeah. So, but I also, like I said, I don't want to define. Even though it's been a career, I mean, there's more. There's more. I think finding that balance through outside of law enforcement, and it's like any other profession. I think it's good. You're relying on people, but it's also. It's good to have interaction with people outside of that to bring you to level you out and see through a different lens also. So whether they are, former owners of liquor stores or what have you.
Yeah.
So
This is why I love doing this shit. So I love it. Let's get ready to go do a bike ride,
all right,
dude.
sounds good.
This is awesome. Thank
Sweet.
you. So good.